Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Michael sent me notes, and Steve, check out the story from Channel 7 in Detroit, WXYZ TV. Cyberattack hits Wayne County government. Services affected as hacker demands ransom. We hear about this all the time, but this is happening in my backyard. Wayne County Circuit Court, for instance, is the court in which I've filed more lawsuits than any other court on earth. Wayne County. And that's largely because a couple of the automakers are headquartered down there. And also, Wayne County is one of the most populous counties around. So as a result, a lot of stuff happens in Wayne County. But unfortunately, the government has ground to a halt because their computers are down. So Ross Jones wrote this for Channel 7. Wayne County government fell victim to a cyber attack on Wednesday, according to sources, bringing some services to a standstill. It was not clear Wednesday who was behind the hack, but a source says the hacker made a financial demand of the county through ransomware. So they're asking for some money. The county information technology team is aware of a cyber incident targeting some internal systems, says the county spokesperson. We are currently investigating the scope of the incident with our cybersecurity partners, which include the FBI and the Michigan State Police. So they've got very, very high-powered people on this, but oftentimes that won't do it. The impact of the hack is being felt throughout county government, and the full scope of the cyber attack is not yet fully understood. At the Wayne County Sheriff's Office, jail inmates could not be bonded out while the servers were compromised. So as you can imagine, if you get processed in Wayne County, someplace somebody types some information into a computer and says, okay, this person's bond is such and such. So somebody at the jail pulls it up and goes, oh, this person's bond is such and such. So if the bond gets paid, I'm sure that gets typed into a computer somewhere, indicating this guy's bond or gal's bond has been paid, and they can now be released. And so then somebody would probably print out some documentation, have some people sign it, and then the person gets released. All of that is dependent on a computer system being set up properly. Defense attorneys said they couldn't schedule visits with their clients following the hack. So again, you can apparently visit your clients if you're a defense attorney in Wayne County. You can visit them in jail by logging onto a computer system and doing it that way. Not anymore, at least not for the time being. The Wayne County Treasurer's Office says that tax payments cannot be collected online, but said taxpayers can still make payments in person. That's an important one because taxes need to be paid on time. So if you go online to pay it, you could do that before, but you can't now. But here's the interesting thing. Is the old-fashioned method where somebody walks in and hands somebody a check will still work because the computer doesn't need to be in the middle of that transaction. And presumably, if they take that check and they deposit that check, the bank doesn't have computer problems. And so your cashed check will be proof that you dropped it off when you dropped it off. So the Wayne County Register of Deeds office closed at noon following the hack, meaning residents couldn't record real estate sales or obtain property records. Now, many people don't actually check their real estate records or property records, but if you're in the middle of selling a house, you do. And if you're buying and selling, of course, that's a problem. So there are going to be some industries, like real estate, completely screwed up right now. We're going to say, oh, we were going to have a closing today, but we can't because of this. It was not immediately clear how the Wayne County prosecutors and clerks' offices were affected by the hack, but neither office's website was working throughout the day, the prosecutors and the clerks. And the Wayne County court clerk, I can tell you that right now, they use computers for a lot of stuff. And all of their records are online, all their files are online, all of that stuff. So, in the old days, I used to walk in there, and when I got called, I'd hand some complaints and a filing fee over, and the clerk would then go over, sit at a desk, type in some basic information, print out some summonses for me, print out some stickers for me because they use stickers to scan everything, and they'd give them back to me. And I wasn't dealing with a computer, but they were. And so that presumably is also screwed up. Now, suppose you've got a case and the statute of limitations runs out tomorrow. You'd like that case to get filed by today. Can you file it? Well, I suspect you can. Because things like that, like the tax payments, they have to be willing to accept them. Otherwise, it screws things up. And the fact that they're using a computer system for their convenience doesn't mean that you can't file your lawsuit just because their computers are down. So I assume that if you walked in and said, hey, I got complaints, they got to get filed today, that they're going to say, okay, we have provisions for that, and probably hand file them and hand stamp them and that kind of thing. So a spokesperson for the Third Circuit Court said business continued as usual Wednesday. But like I said, I don't know if they're using their computers or not, because their computers were a major part of the system. The scary part about this is that we've heard of hospitals and their systems going down. We've heard of city governments and their systems going down. And I'm talking about where hackers have taken control of them and said, hey, look, you want your systems back, you got to pay us a ransom. And my understanding is that quite often these ransoms get paid. And so you would think, and I'm sure there's people out there whose pay grade is higher than mine on this, who are going to say, but, it's more difficult than you think. I'm not saying that it's not difficult, but you'd think that somebody would get together out there with some other bright people and go, this is actually a very serious problem because it involves millions and millions and millions of dollars that are being asked in ransoms, as well as millions and millions of dollars in damage being done because every day these systems are down, all kinds of heck is breaking loose. You'd think that somebody out there would figure out a way to create a backup system that is offline somehow, or mostly offline, so that when these systems get tied up and hacked and compromised and ransomed, that somebody could go, oh, fine, and just kind of like shut that off and shuffle it out and shuffle in the backup. Now, I know people are going to say, but Steve, that's not how it works. You're telling me that an invention like that, which would take some work, I assume, that would be worth millions of dollars, that nobody's trying to do that right now? Somebody's got to be working on that, I would think, where there's a need, right? Isn't that how that generally works? But the interesting thing about this is, if you said, Steve, pick a county in Michigan that is going to be hacked this way, I would have said, I'm thinking Wayne County might be a candidate. And it's only because it's really, really large, but they don't have as much money as they really ought to have. And so I suspect that they're underfunded in some areas. And I suspect that their cybersecurity is not what it ought to be. Now, on the other hand, if you said, Steve, no. What about some county in the upper peninsula of Michigan that nobody ever even thinks about that much unless they live there? What about something like that? I'd go, well, I can see that too. But they might also worry that a small county that hasn't got the money to pay a ransom. You say, you guys got to pay us $10 million. They're like, hey, that's our budget for like the last 5 years. Are you crazy? Can't pay that. So we don't know what the demand here is or whether they can work around it or not. But like I said, would love to see somebody come up with a workaround where they can say, look, somebody just locked up our system and encoded our data. Oh, we got it all backed up. And the interesting thing is, this is just with courts, not with other entities. But I know that courts in Michigan are required to keep all of their stuff backed up off-site. So in the old days, you used to walk in and hand them papers, and they put them in a file, and they had a paper file, and then you had copies, but they had the original file. And some places like Oakland County, you could actually see it behind the clerk's counter. There was a big safe, a walk-in safe with a big door on it. It wasn't valuables; it was the court files. But they also scanned everything and backed it up and kept it off-site. And I've mentioned before that there's a village called Plymouth in Michigan, beautiful place, Plymouth, Michigan, and the Plymouth District Court burned down. It's about 20, 25 years ago now. But I was a lawyer, and I remember hearing about the Plymouth District Court burning down. And my first thought was, boy, I hope they have everything backed up. And they didn't. And so the call went out that if you got a case in Plymouth District Court, you need to contact the judge's clerk and talk about reconstructing the file because they didn't have it. And where that really made a dent was there are some cases that must be tried within a certain calendar frame, and it's a hard date, meaning that it can't be pushed back. So for drunk driving cases, for instance, if you get arrested here, you must be adjudicated by here. And there were drunk driving files in their collection that got burned with the rest of the building. And there were a bunch of drunk drivers who it was their lucky day. But I digress. So we're talking right now about Wayne County government, and it looks like the clerk's office, treasurer's office, register of deeds, the jail, or at least the sheriff's office and things like that, have problems because a cyber attack has hit Wayne County. Services affected as the hacker has demanded a ransom, but they haven't spoken much about exactly what that might be. So, Michael, thanks for sending it from WXYZ. Ross Jones wrote it. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. Money can't buy happiness, but it sure makes misery easier to live with.